Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Okay. Testing. Well, it's live, perfect streaming. Well, maybe it's not there yet, but it's streaming. Let me reload it. Perfect streaming. Streaming Ocean Pie Association YouTube, streaming now. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2.
Keep plugging them. Let's just go live.
Testing 1 2.
I hear my sound.
Testing 1 2.
I hear the sound's good too. So it's live and I hear it, I can see it. I don't know what 78 is probably. All right. Time.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, call for approval of the agenda. I'd like to move that the agenda be amended for today's meeting.
I will second that.
All right. Seeing no discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of amending today's meeting agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Aye. No abstentions? Okay. All right, we're going to change the meeting agenda. The first one is I'm going to move that we remove the motion to go into a leasing of the golf course. The action, which one is it? Right here. To move the director's initiative. Yeah, there's one on here. Hold on. Yeah, right here. The board of directors should RP with independent industry expert to lease the OPA golf course. All right. I make a motion to remove that item from the agenda. Is there a second?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Stand by.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
I said we have to have a second first. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay.
For discussion.
Point of
Mr.
order.
Chairman, point of order. According to Robert's rules, number one, when I request this, I don't need to be second. Number two, what you're suggesting, Mr. Chairman, is basically that a majority of this board controls any director's item that's brought before this board for discussion and vote. Now, let me say, this is not according to Robert's rules, number one. Number two, if this board passes what you're suggesting, in essence, this majority is censoring individual directors to bring forward before the community, before the membership, any item, any topic they so choose to discuss. If you have a problem with my motion, let's see if it's second, or you can vote it down. But to remove any director's item from the agenda is not in compliance with Robert's rules.
Let me address your point of order. This motion was brought up at our November 2nd meeting by this sitting board and did not even receive a second to make it to the floor. To introduce it again today is unprofessional and unnecessary. The board has already rendered a decision on whether or not to move forward with this discussion item in the form of a motion. It's been done already. There's no need to do it again.
Mr. Chairman, I have a privilege to bring any motion
Out of order.
mine.
To have another discussion on this, please.
I have a privilege to bring any of my motions, if they have not been seconded, in front of the board again. Please stick to the Roberts rules. If you do not, I will ask this board to remove you as a chair of this meeting.
Look, Slobodan, if you want to cause controversy, do so. I'm merely pointing out that this sitting board, these same people, had this motion at the November 2nd meeting. Go back and look at the minutes, the exact same thing. Why we are bringing it up again is a waste of time. It's a slap in the face to this board that has already rendered a decision on whether or not we want to bring this forward. So you, as grandstanding, does not do the community or anyone else here any good.
Please follow Robert's rules of order. Please follow Robert's rules of order. That's what
Okay.
this board is supposed to do.
Very good. Any other comments on this, please?
Okay.
All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those who want to strike this motion from the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? One aye, one nay, 4 abstain. All right, let's leave it on the agenda. One aye, one nay, 4 abstain. Any other changes to the agenda?
Yes. I move that we add 3 items. The first item is a motion to approve the police station expansion construction contract. The second item is to...
Hey, Frank, do them one at a time, please.
Okay.
And item 2, there's been a request to have an item added to the agenda with regard to the construction project for the police and admin building. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any questions on that one? Then I'll call the question. All those in favor of adding that to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Okay. Other agenda items.
Second item, to add to the agenda a motion to approve the contract for a golf clubhouse design and construction contract.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of adding that item to the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Any other items?
The third item is to add to the agenda approval of a contract for the cart barn design and construction.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of adding that item to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Any other changes to the agenda? I will put those 3 motions at the last part of new business right before the motion to move into closed session. So all those in favor, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to amend the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes from the March 9th meeting. I will entertain a motion to accept those meeting minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the questions. All those in favor of accepting the meeting minutes from the March 9th regular meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Next item, approval of the meeting minutes from the March 30th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes for the March 30 special meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Abstain. I wasn't present.
Okay, one abstention? Okay. 5-0 and 1. Okay. Next item on the agenda, President's remarks. Very quickly, I know we got a full agenda today. I wanted to reiterate one of the things that came up at the town hall meeting, and that's the discussion about the roundabout, the concept that the state has presented us with regard to the roundabout. Steve, thank you for bringing the items back in. We had these displayed at the town hall meeting. It's a rendering. Again, it's a concept. So right now, the state does not have any funding. Oh, okay.
You've lost the clicker.
I lost the clicker. Yeah, I can't have the clicker. So the state has not gotten the funding yet, but conceptually, they are wanting to move forward. So a couple of things have to happen. The people right across the street from 589 Ayers, they've already donated the property. The state is asking us to donate, it's like 3 or 4/10 of an acre on either side, so that they can do all the things that they have to do for the roundabout. I know there's been a lot of questions, so what we wanted to do is make sure that the state heard any concerns, any questions anybody had. So Steve has volunteered to take the information. The guy's name is Don Wilson over at State Highway Administration, who we talked to once already. So any of the questions that you have regarding the roundabout, opinions, other options that you want to consider, please funnel them through Steve. Steve's going to take them all together, and we'll send them over to the folks over at the State Highway Administration from MDOT and get that information going. Again, this is a state issue. It's not a Ocean Pines issue. We don't have any really jurisdictions, as I said in the town hall meeting. So just be advised that we certainly want to take the opinions and other information from the community over to MDOT and at least express our opinion on them. All right. So other than that, I have no more comments. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, Treasurer's Report. John Vola.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Okay. So for the financial change for the month of February 2019, revenues over budget, approximately 50,000. We need somebody to click it. Yeah? Who's clicking today?
Where'd Charlie go? He took the clicker.
Who is it clicking?
I wasn't trying to click the clicker.
Okay, here we go. Because I'm being timed. Revenues over budget 50,000, expenses over budget approximately 4,000. Our net operating profit favorable for the month, 54,000 rounded. Next slide. Okay, financial change for the month. We're favorable, $86,000 in the following areas: public works, aquatics. I'm not going to read them all, and they'll be addressed in Kobe and Steve's updates. We were offset by unfavorable variance, $32,000. Most of it was the yacht club. Steve will touch on that, but it's more in the timing of when certain bonuses and other items were recorded, but we'll talk more on that as time comes. Net operating loss favorable to budget, $54,000. Let's talk year-to-date, 10 months. Revenues over budget, $512,000 rounded. Expenses over budget, $309,000. Obviously, when you have more revenue, a lot of times, especially with the yacht club, you're going to incur salaries. New capital over budget. Since we don't budget for new capital, any money spent there, $19,000. It will be unfavorable. Favorable to budget, 10 months, year-to-date, $184,000. Next slide. Let's talk about the year-to-date. We're favorable in finance, public works. Rec and parks came in favorable, mostly at the end of the year. The police have been favorable all year. The beach club and yacht club favorable, $399,000 total. This was offset by unfavorable variances, $196,000. We saw general admin during the year, certain items as far as contractors, consultants, whatever, we were unfavorable there, along with the GM office. General maintenance, $64,000 unfavorable. We did work there for the yacht club that was not budgeted. Aquatics, other, $196,000 to the unfavorable side. The new capital, again, is the $19,000, favorable to budget, $184,000 after 10 months. Keep in mind the next 2 months are the months where we basically drain on our cash and we really don't have much revenue coming in, but I'll talk about that with the forecast. Next slide. Okay, so this is a slide that will always be in there. This is our reserves, very important, and very important that we give an update to the board every month, especially possibly with all the construction that might come about in the next year. So here we are, your balance is the 7.9 up top right corner. I've spoken to you about that all year. The 131.19 balance was 9.5. To go to a forecasted balance, and we could have updated that a little more on that line, but the forecasted balance for April 30th, 2019 is we're looking at a total in our reserves of $8.6 million. The reserves for replacement, 5.3, the bulkheads, 2.3, 1.0. We are reflecting in there some of the expenses that are coming through. You see the North Star expense, which was already approved. There's nothing in there so far in the next couple of months for any possible construction, but we will update as that goes by. BNF is working on it as well as our assistant treasurer. Next slide. Okay, so now we see where our reserves are. Let's see where our cash and our short-term investments are. All year we've talked, and it still is, everything is laddered. The rate of return as calculated by our finance lead is 2.35, not bad in this environment. At February 28, 2019, the association had $10.2 million in cash, and you see the last couple of months, it's been coming down. Obviously, as I've spoken to you, the last few months we do drain cash. The important part on that, and what I've broken out, and we will continue to break out, is how much of that cash is for the current year, and how much of that cash has come in already for the next year. So we break that out for you. Approximately $7.9 million invested in CDARS, fully FDIC insured. Approximately $2.3 million in money market and other operating accounts, fully insured. And that ties to your other number. All right, next slide. I don't know if I missed something here. Okay, so here's the forecast. So a couple slides earlier, after 10 months, we reported that we were positive 180,000. This is what I'm going to give you for the 12-month forecast is pretty consistent with other years and what happens in the 2 months that follows. The P&L net operating forecast, approximately 60,000 to the favorable. A couple points on that, and that will be vetted by the B&F committee. There is a work group and a couple people that will vet that for us. The cash forecast is $14 million. The estimated 2019-2020 cash collected, which I just spoke to you that we would break out, is $5.2 million. So you can see the difference. Reserves estimate is the 8.6. Yacht Club, and I am receiving some questions on that, and there will be more detail in the B&F meeting this month, but we're breaking it out. So where we are on that is, hold on one second so I can read it. So the Yacht Club is the estimated loss, including bonuses, management fee, and commissions, is somewhere going to be in the $80,000 range. So it's actually gotten better from the last 2 times I've reported to you. So that's a good sign on what's going on at the Yacht Club. Now, within that number is a management fee and commissions of $130,000 netted in that number. The budget bonus is $50,000 approximately. So that's been consistent more or less, and there might be some adjustment on that, but again, these are estimates. And the profit bonus estimate is $10,000. So that's the detail. I've gotten a lot of questions on it. As far as calculations, the B&F committee will review that. Okay.
Thank you, John. The next item on the agenda is the operations report. So.
Good morning, everybody. I want to touch base on a couple things that I've been asked over the last few weeks in different departments. In regards to the racket center, we're getting ready to redo our clay courts over there. So if you're a tennis player, that's going to happen within the next 2 weeks. They'll be coming over and resurfacing those, which is an annual maintenance that we do every year. Bob Grant with the Public Works Department has done a really good job at staying on top of a few of those courts this winter that has allowed play throughout the entire winter. We have the Worcester Prep tennis teams over there that are renting the courts this spring, and they were there last year as well. So if you decide to go over and see it, there's a lot of the Worcester Prep kids that are playing over there. They're fun to watch. We're also currently working on getting the permit for a shade structure that will be placed down between pickleball and tennis, the tennis courts down at the bottom. In regards to the beach club bathrooms, this year we're going to be doing something a little bit different. They will be open by the team in the morning time. That gets there, probably the lifeguard staff is there by about 8:30, and they will close at 6 when the facilities close. They will be deep cleaned each evening. We're having someone come in and deep clean those bathrooms with the sand and the water that's on the floors in there. And we will also have an attendant that will be there from 11 to 3 each day starting Memorial Day weekend that will be cleaning them consistently throughout those hours. If we need to adjust those hours based on volume, we'll do that. Also, with our beach wheelchairs, if any of you have used those over the last couple of years, we're going to leave the access of those available until the guards leave. So they were being locked up previously around 3:30, and this summer they'll be locked up between about 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the evenings. And we just put in a new ADA sidewalk going down to the bathrooms, which will be a little bit easier for some of our guests that have trouble getting down that path. That was just installed about 2 weeks ago. If you have any questions on that, on the bathrooms or anything, you can reach out to me through email. We have 2 Easter events coming up. One is our Easter egg dive at the pool, Friday, April 19th from 5:30 to 8. And then the Recreation and Parks host their annual Easter Festival the following day on the 20th, right over here from 11 to 2. They're collecting plastic eggs and candy donations if anyone would like to drop that off here at the rec department. They appreciate that. And the last thing I wanted to touch on is the swim and racket staging area. Can you go to the next slide, Steve? You can see that Public Works has that completely cleaned out. They got the sod in there and a new fence has been put up, so that area is back to normal and actually looking even nicer than before. So, thank you.
Applause, wow. I just wanted to touch on the finance and administration items that I wanted to highlight. North Star, you're going to see on the probably on the report for several months to come as we look to implement this vital software for the association. Right now, the project's still on task with data expected to be loaded for May 1st. We just had a meeting yesterday. That's going to be when our user acceptance testing would actually begin. The team at North Star is going to come into the field, so their experts are going to be here on April 15th through the 18th. At that time, we'll try to get more understanding of the go-live date for the fall, which would be after the Labor Day season, to be determined after this site analysis is done. On the forensic audit, or the forensic audits, we continue to wrap up the open items with respect to the 2 audits underway. Gross Mendelson and the partner Jim Kern has continued to assure me that they're on track for providing the results by the end of the fiscal year, which of course is this month. So more to come on that. And then that leads into our year-end audit, which is fast upon us. And in May, SC&H, our external auditors, will be here to audit the financial statements from a preliminary standpoint, May 13th, and then they'll be here for final in June. So that is on the horizon. I wanted to, I guess, reiterate pool coupon cards, since that's been a topic of discussion, and I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of how we're handling those going forward. And this relates to the coupon cards provided through the coupon loads, as well as the beach club memberships that are good for entries to the pool that come with the card. Back in October, November is when, of course, we decided that these pool entry purchases need to be aligned with the fiscal year, consistent with all other types of membership purchases. And so any entries that we had still accumulated on the cards will show up in the system as having an expiration date of 4/30/2020, which is, of course, 13 months from now, when the cards are actually scanned, is when the expiration date shows up. So as stated in the town hall last Saturday that unfortunately I was unable to attend, this changes to a liner accounting. And the intent certainly not to take away balances from members or recognize revenue any quicker. When the decision was made, 13 months seemed to be a reasonable period of time to utilize any of the accumulated balances remaining. However, the association will work with membership at the end of next year if you are a member that has a very large balance of entries currently remaining. So that's where we stand with that. Lots of good things happening in the marketing PR department. One item that I wanted to point out is that the press release placement into local media for the past 6 months has been at an 85% level. So that's a good indicator of both OPA's market influence as well as the effective use of inexpensive and free marketing in this sense. And then last item, I just wanted to highlight OPA's new broker of record, Dealey Insurance, is going to be here next week, and we'll be presenting at a special meeting next Saturday, 9 o'clock. The presentation will summarize their work and finding over the past 1.5 months in auditing OPA's types and levels of property and casualty insurance coverage. Thank you.
Steve, thank you. Next item on the agenda is public comments. Next item on the agenda is public comments. As with public comments, please say your name and your address. The floor is open for public comments. I'm sorry, go up to. Let Charlie. There we go.
Real close. Now you can hear
There we
me?
go.
Okay. Lynn Sika, 56 Bramblewood Drive, Ocean Pines. I'm here for the violation of 54 Bramblewood. CPI has been working with me for 12 years now with the nightmare, the mess, the disgust that I live next to. The house is in total nightmare. It's got stuff everywhere, and so finally they've decided that it needs to move to the board because the letters have been ignored. There are no fines for people that want to live like this and the junk, and I wanted the drama, so I took pictures. They said I could send them over, but I thought if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to leave them with you so you can see what I have to live next to and the garbage. Now, I wish I could put them up here, then everybody could see this, but what's interesting is there's two things. Number one, in the 11th hour yesterday, after all these years, this is what I look at. It's lovely. It's charming. There's junk. There's growth. It's a greenhouse with mold. It's just a nightmare. Interestingly enough, yesterday, after all of this, because Mike has been in my corner forever, and there's no fine, so they pick up a little bit and then they ignore it. I watched the Era Brockovich movie yesterday to get fired up for this so that everybody would understand how upset I am over this. But anyway, so they took 2 truckloads. There's a bunch of young kids that live there in their early 20s. The parents have moved. I don't know when they're coming back. But anyway, they took out a couple of truckloads. They probably need about 7 more. So this isn't making me happy. And when we moved in 12 years ago, I guess they had been asked to remove their shed. That being said, there was this glowing blue tarp that was on the property line. Well, Mike finally got them to use most of it. However, I tried to circle it so when you guys look at these pictures later, on the back 2 pages, there's, it looks like some blue things sticking out of the woods. What it is it's the platform of the shed that used to be there that's a huge, That's a huge piece of wood. I can't pick it up. And on top of that, you'll see the blue metal strips. I have no idea what it is. But I tried to circle the 2-inch rusty nails that stick up. And I've asked them, because my granddaughters are down a lot, and that's just another issue. So I'm just so grateful that it's gotten finally to the board after all these years. And just as a closing statement, I hope you all realize that there isn't any way, not that I'm going to, but if I wanted to sell my house, I could not. The people on the other side of them are never there. The people across the street are never there. So the only other people that see this are Marcy and Ken Mitchell, who live across the street from me, who of course totally support all of this. So I'm in this walk by myself, and I really need your support to get this junk out of there. That's it.
Thank you. First of all, if you leave the pictures with me.
I certainly am.
You can bring them up here. And then your name was?
Lynn Sieka, S-I-E-K-A, 56. I get the view 24/7.
Okay. Yeah, if you
Thank you.
drop the things off. Thank you. Yeah.
I started with the driveway from the first.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so
We'll make sure the right people get them. Thank you.
Did I?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Other public comments?
Joe Reynolds, 84 Watertown Road. I promised myself I wasn't going to make any comments today because, generally speaking, they're useless to do so. But this lady has prompted me to respond. This house is an abomination to this community. It's a disgrace to the management of this community. I believe Tom Herrick is in the room. When Mr. Herrick was on the board of directors several years ago, the board of directors received many complaints about this property. The board voted unanimously to direct the general manager to clean this place up, that home. Voted unanimously. And here we are 3 years later, and this lady still has to put up with this? I mean, I don't know what to say anymore, because we don't have a general manager problem. We have a board of directors problem, and it never seems to end, unfortunately. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Thank you so much.
Other public comments?
I'm Reginald Przybylski. I live at 14 Ivanhoe Court. My spelling of my last name is P-R-Z-Y-B-Y-L-S-K-I. I've read some articles in the newspaper, haven't seen it from you all, but I understand that you have commented on, number one, the liquor license for the facilities in our complex, our yacht club and the beach club and wherever we have liquor licenses. And I understand that somebody has said that we're going to give a share of Ocean Pines to each of the people, Matt Orr and his partner, I guess it is, and that money, whatever that value of that, those shares are, I don't understand why we're doing that, number one. Number two, why wouldn't we have somebody that's an employee of Ocean Pines get the liquor licenses? If Matt Orr and his group, if we have a problem with him at some point in time, can't they just walk out the door and pull those shares with them? Or well, I don't know, because I haven't seen anything about that. So, and I don't know what the value of those shares are, unless there's something written contractually that they have to return those, okay? So that's my comment on that. Number two, I'm retired police, okay? I was in Baltimore County Police, retired detective lieutenant. My second comment is we have a police department here. I'm not sure why we have a police department here, but we do. It's a very costly thing for us. I don't see why there's not a reason why we can't think about bringing in the sheriff's department, eliminating our police department, and pay whatever extra fees we have to the sheriff's department and whatever we have to supply, okay? Because I think it's a possibility. It may be cost effective. There's many other jurisdictions in other states and in this state that do that. And it's a consideration we should look at.
Other public comments?
Yes, I'm Ann Shockley. I live at 273 Windjammer Road. I'm also chair of the Ocean Pines Ladies Golf Association. So I am hoping that the board will be able to vote later on today, this morning, to accept the bid to replace the golf clubhouse and cart barn so that we can move forward with this initiative. We as homeowners, and I'm on ARC, so I'm going to find out about this, have a duty to maintain our properties so as to retain the value, so we can show pride and create a pleasant living environment. So we have the same duty as residents of Ocean Pines to do the same for our amenities, all of our amenities. We need to proceed forth as soon as possible to stop the deterioration of these amenities, in this instance, the golf clubhouse and the cart barn. If the means are at hand, specifically a competitive and realistic bid, priced within the means of the board, to pass without going to a referendum. Then we need, and that meets the needs of the community, then I urge the board to accept that bid. The golf course is doing well. Under the present management, the board and John and Andre, we are up several hundred rounds of golf this year, which speaks to good marketing and that people want to come here. And they want to come here and see a good course, fun to play, and that nice amenities. Plus, that will also work for the community. We'll have extra meeting space and something that you can be proud of. So please, I urge the board to please pass that, whatever you have to do to get it rolling and get with it now. Thank you.
Other public, before the next public comment, sir, about the, you're asking about the, if you're going to be around after the meeting, we could spend some, I'll explain to you about the shares and how that's working out. If you're available after the meeting, I'm available to help you out. Other public comments?
Larry Perrone, 19 Clipper Court, and I'm also here as a representative, as the president of the Ocean Pines Members Golf Council, to reiterate what Ann Shockley had to say. I know specifically how much hard work has gone into getting the bids to replace or renovate the country club / multi-use building. Our members are here today to urge the board to vote yes in not only approving the contracts for the country club, but also for the cart barn and for the police administration building. There's a lot of money that will be spent over the next year. However, we do have the money in our reserve accounts. We've looked at the impact that the spend will have on our reserve accounts. While it will bring it to a level that is a little lower than the Budget and Finance Committee would like, it will keep, the association will be in good financial condition, and over the next couple years we'll be able to replenish that money into the reserve account. Also, we want to urge the board not to even second the two motions being presented by Director Trendick. The motion to look into leasing out the golf course was addressed last November, and again, as President Parks pointed out, it wasn't seconded at that time, and I find it disgraceful that Director Trendick would try to bring this up again, as well as his motion to, regardless of knowing what the numbers are in regard to the country club building, to send it out to referendum when it is clear at this point that number is below the referendum number. Again, this is nothing but a strategy on the part of Mr. Trendick and Tom Stouse of the Ocean Pines newspaper to delay this project and to prevent any spending in the association as possible. This board has a historic opportunity to take some steps to restore the buildings in Ocean Pines to a level that they should be. And again, our golf community and as an individual member of the association, we urge the board to vote yes on these three motions and no on Director Trendick's motions. Thank you.
Other public comments?
Good morning. My name's Don McMullen, 53 Cannon Drive. I have been a property owner since 1972 and a homeowner since the mid-70s. I am on the Golf Advisory Committee. I'm also the president of the Ocean Pines Men's Golf Association. I've had the pleasure of playing this course for well over 45 years. I am tickled pink with the progress that I've seen in reference to our board overseeing the possible new construction of not only the community, I call it a community building because there is large space there for the community if this is built, but just as important, a cart barn. We have a $325,000 investment from 2 years ago for brand new carts. And as I think, if you've been over to that cart barn, you know that it needs to be not refurbished, but it needs to be, a new building needs to be built. I am 100%, as I think everyone in our community, behind the addition to the Police Department Administration building. It's well needed, and I would hope that we all vote yes for that today as a board. And with the cart barn, and again, I call it, you can call it the golf community building because over half that space is for the community. And I think that's a positive, progressive way for our community to continue to grow. And I applaud you for that. So thank you for your hard work, and hopefully you'll vote yes on those 3 items. Thank you.
Other public comments? Sir, if it's easy for you to sit, if you can grab the microphone, that's fine.
Thank you. I just have, hello, is it on? Oh, I just have a couple questions on the cart barn and or the country club building or golf building, call it what you will.
I'm sorry, sir, for the record, could you please name and address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Bill Sheridan, 398 Ocean Parkway. How many bids did we get on those buildings? How many bids did we? Okay, let's start with the country club or golf club or whatever you call it. Both of them acceptable bids. And the cart barn, 1. And we would go ahead with 1 bid on the cart barn? For what reason? Why would we, what would restrict people from bidding on the cart barn?
Sir, just a point of order. So it's public comments, and so I'm sure that a particular discussion will come up as we talk about the motion when it comes onto
the motion is to vote positive or negative, right. And I'm trying to make a comment to make your decision. Is that acceptable?
Yes, comment is certainly acceptable, please.
Okay, thank you. I read recently, too, that we just determining, I'm going to use determining the needs for the country club. I think there was a design person out there and a backhoe out there the other day, am I correct, to check on the foundation and so on? How are we going to vote to approve a price today when we don't know what needs to be done? Usually you come out with specs, designs, just like other things, airplanes or whatever. They design and then they issue a contract. How can we issue a contract? We don't know what has to be done and what is going to be done. No comments?
Sir, again, this is public comments, and just due to protocol, if it's not part of a back and forth, we certainly accept all and encourage all the comments, but that discussion will happen during the discussion about the motion itself.
Okay. Well, to end that comment, you know, how are we going to get a hard number? I don't think Ocean Pines has had a good experience in contracting. Within that building, there's an area that can seat 140 people. In the paper, it said for golf tournament, whatever you want to call it, meals. But it said also that they're only going to cook hamburgers and hot dogs there, and maybe French fries. I don't want to get in a competition with the yacht club, point blank. We spent a lot of money on that yacht club. And I don't know what that space will be used for, where you can sit 140 people. That's reasonably significant. Going on a different little subject, have we addressed at all to look for a management company to run Ocean Pines? That's just a question that can be or cannot be addressed. Financial question. What were the expenditures where we reduced the capital, what we had?
So if they could put up the slide, 300,000 of the 500,000 was for the North Star and the TOAST systems. The TOAST is the point of entry that we needed for the country club. This has all been discussed in prior meetings.
Hey, John, if you would, can we take that offline with this gentleman and provide him all the information he needs after the meeting?
Afterwards, I'll give you the information.
Thank you.
Maybe you can just give me what was the biggest? North Star? I thought one of your screens showed a couple $1 million coming out of. Okay. The other thing, I used to years ago join the swim club, the year-round one, and nothing against children swimming or whatever, but when you lease things out, and I'm also talking about renting the courts, tennis courts, pickleball, whatever, and a paid member gets there and can't play because it's rented out, that's, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought I heard someone say something. I don't think that's right, especially when you got the covered pool. Should be able to pay big bucks for that. And I know this has been probably discussed many times, and the bonus paid out at the yacht club, if I'm not mistaken, the screen showed that we're in a loss position. Why do you pay bonuses in a loss position? That's just my question. That's not logical. Thank you.
Other public comments? There's the microphone. Microphone's right there.
I can walk up here.
Oh, there's a microphone.
Is that all right?
Sorry.
You want me to use both? I'm not loud enough? I need both mics? Really? You want me to bring it up a little bit? Really? Come on, you guys are killing me now. Now you're just playing with me. Tom Janicek, 17 Lookout Point, also chair of the Environmental Natural Assets Committee. I just want to say, first off, with the golf course, I didn't look at the agenda because I got here late. Unfortunately, I was binge watching something on Netflix this morning. But But it's my opinion, if you're going to vote to approve the clubhouse, let's get this thing started. Let's get a backhoe in there, knock that thing down, put a couple of trailers up there. So, because the majority of the play, and everybody, all the members here will attest to it, the majority of the play are outsiders coming in, package deals, the public. For them to see for the last 3 years that we've been doing construction or under construction and nothing's being done, is just a detriment to bringing in more new people to the golf course. If you get some construction going, get a big hole in the ground, get a couple of trailers out there, all the package play coming in this year is going to want to go, hey, you know what? They're finally doing something. Here we go. We're going to get a new clubhouse for next year. Let's go ahead and register to come back here and play again next year. I think it can only bring up the business. That's just my opinion. Okay, secondly, just so everyone knows, I'm with the Environmental and Natural Assets Committee. Some people don't like me very much, but it's okay. We'll get over it. On Thursday, in this building right here, in this room, the Protectors of the St. Martin and the Ocean Pines Environmental and Natural Assets Committee are putting together a meeting. It's for land and water protection, conservation, and improvement. We're going to have speakers from Maryland, from Lower Shore Land Trust and from Maryland Coastal Bays. It starts at 6:30, the doors open. The program starts at 7. It's going to be basically an information session to show what we're doing in the community and around Worcester County to protect our waterways, what can be done, and to answer questions from people that are on the waterways. Right now, you know we have this algae bloom that's going on all over the back canals. That will be discussed as well. So it's open to anyone in the public. It'll be here on Thursday, April 11th at 7 o'clock. You can get here at 6:30. Yes, ma'am. Sure. Know anything about all the dead fish in South? It's the same thing. It's a oxygen depletate because of the algae blooms. The algae's actually, yep, we absolutely. We'll talk about anything. There's going to be public comments. You can ask questions of Maryland Coastal Bays and the Lower Shore Land Trust. A couple of the guys that do nothing but get grants for Maryland Coastal Bays and help with the waterways are going to be there. So everyone's invited. Please come. The next thing is Bay Day. Ocean Pines Bay Day is on May 5th. It's going to be huge this year. It was great last year. Free kayak rides, free swim call boat taking you out looking at the waterways. There's going to be a bunch of activities for children, grandchildren to come. They're going to be building bat boxes and bird houses. They're going to be giving away some rain barrels and plants. We've got some donations from a nursery out on 50. They're going to be giving away trees and plants that will help sustain and filter the water as it's going back into the canals. So I encourage everybody. It's a Sunday. Hopefully it's going to be as beautiful as it was last year. We have over 40 exhibitors coming with, snakes and rats and all kinds of crazy stuff that you can touch and pet, So please come out, tell your friends, bring as many people. I think it's a great event. It's free, absolutely free. You do have to pay for some burley beer, well, some of us do, and food. But otherwise, please come out. Thank you guys for your time. I appreciate it. Thanks for all you do. I know you don't get a lot of recognition, but I do appreciate you guys putting in the time.
Other public comments? Yeah.
Slobodan Trendik, 20 Drawbridge. After hearing the words disgrace, unprofessional, irresponsible, to categorize the two motions that I have in front of the board, I'm compelled to make my own comment. The board is elected by 8,452 homeowners to represent everybody equally. We should take our duties, fiduciary duties, very seriously. My two motions are precisely that, because I feel that what the motions call for is the right course of action, to represent everybody equally and to treat associations' assets correctly. I don't know if my motion will be even second or not. If somebody seconds it, I welcome the discussion and I will debate the topic in a professional, responsible way, not unprofessional or irresponsible. And I take the comment describing my motion as a disgrace, as a personal insult. And I'm sorry to see that some members of this community have come down to that level to make this kind of comments. It does nothing but to discourage other homeowners from stepping forward to occupy this table and to be under the microscope by everybody every single day as we try to do what we believe individually is the voice of a reason, a common sense, the compliance with laws, bylaws, regulations, etc. So I just want to leave you with that food for thought.
Other public comments?
All right. Can you hear me? All right. I'm just going to make this short and sweet. Esther Diller, 9 Widows Watch. I know this is a passionate issue with the country club and with the Cart Barn. I am fully aware of it. I'm going to tell you, it is not easy sitting up here. If anybody in the audience here wants to run, we have 3 seats opening up. Let us know. It is not easy, okay? But every director on this board has a right to bring whatever motion that he or she chooses to bring, and the board has a right to deny it or approve it. I don't agree with disgraceful. I think that is inappropriate, okay? This is a discussion. This is what we do, okay? Yes, sometimes arguments ensue, as we've all seen. We are also human. I know that may be hard to believe, but we are, okay? We try to do things as best we can, but, you know, you got to keep the humility in check, and you have to keep the respect in check, whether we agree or not. Believe me, we disagree all the time, all right? And, you know, it doesn't stop me from, you know, going out and having a drink with one of my colleagues, okay? This is not the way it should be done. You can disagree, you can not like a motion, but it is not easy sitting up here. It has been an eye-opener for me. I can tell you that, all right? You want people to run, you got to show them that this is worth the time up here. And folks, this is a lot of time, okay? So I just have to say that because this has just really bothered me. I understand the passion in the room, I get it. But that wasn't necessary, and I just had to speak my mind, as you all know that I do. Thank you.
Other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close the floor for public comments. Next item on the agenda is capital purchase requests, and there have none been submitted for this meeting, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, that is CPI violations. Ms. Colby.
The first one is 16 Sandy Hook Road, and it's for maintenance issues. And the second one is 54 Bramblewood Drive, which is for, one of the issues is box trailer, but I think Lynn shared the other issues there for that one.
Okay. Let's take the first item on 16 Sandy Hook. I'll entertain a motion to find 16 Sandy Hook in continuing violation.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor of finding 16 Sandy Hook Road in continuing violation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Move on to the next property, 54 Bramblewood. I'll entertain a motion to find 54 Bramblewood in continuing violation.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah, I like
Seeing nothing, seeing no, I'll call the question. All those in favor of finding 54 Bramblewood in continuing violation, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. No more CPI violations. We'll move into the next item on the agenda, which is unfinished business. We have no unfinished business from previous meeting. Moving on to the next item, new business. First motion, move to appoint Jeff Nepper as director on the OPA board. That's me. The motion is to move to appoint Jeff Nepper as a director on the OPA board. Purpose and effect, this appointment will serve to comply with the requirements of Section 5.04 of the bylaws to appoint an individual to fill a vacancy on the board. Background, with the recent departure of Director Maroney, the board is obligated to appoint an individual to replace him for the remainder of his current term. Jeff Nepper is a former board member and has the experience to step into the role and integrate himself into the current board level activities and responsibilities. Is there a second?
I second.
Discussion.
Come join us, Jeff.
Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of appointing Jeff Nepper as a director on the OPA board, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Jeff, you're welcome to join us up here at the front. And thank you for filling in. Take your time.
Should we apologize
Yes.
now?
Yeah, just let me publicly thank you, Jeff. I know that the board unanimously believes that you're the right person. We appreciate you. I'm sure the community appreciates the time you're going to put in to help us get through all this. So thank you again. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, motion to approve the position of Director of Operations. That's mine as well. I move to approve the position of Director of Operations as requested by the General Manager with a salary range commensurate with the associated duties and responsibilities. Purpose and effect. The motion will formalize the position in conjunction with the restructuring of specific reporting and responsibility requirements of OPA operations as recommended by the General Manager. Background, Section 9.02A states the General Manager serves as a manager of the association, including all departments and units, and shall organize, consolidate, or combine offices, positions, departments, or units as necessary for efficient operations. The departure of the former GM, along with the establishment of the transition management team, exposed a need to have additional administrative oversight in several areas of the operation. The new position allows the Public Works Department to be included in the operational reporting structure and allows decisions to be made in a consistent manner and level within the organization. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Well,
unfortunately, John Viola, our GM, is not here. Really, I have a comment and a question which relates to him answering. I'm fully in support of the suggested motion. What I would be interested to know, and as you recall, at the last board meeting, I had put forward a motion and then withdrew it, which was to discuss organizational structure and restructuring of the association. And with two directors not being present, I was encouraged to withdraw my motion, which I did. But the question still remains. We are being asked to approve a new position that has not been budgeted for. We don't know what the new organizational structure is that the GM envisions that calls for basically this position. Are we consolidating existing resources, bringing them together? Are we eliminating some positions? So I think what would behoove the board is, if this is not the time to have this information, but I think it would help us all to know your recommended new position. How does it change the current organizational structure, which we as a board have asked previous GM to redo and get back to us some time ago? And our, as you know, our organizational chart is still on the website as under review, and it's been like that for a year and a half. So if you can shed some light, to the board and to the community, I think it would be great. Is this your first reaction to how you plan to reorganize, restructure? How is that going to impact our headcounts? Any eliminations, et cetera?
You want me to, and I'll make it high level for now, when you can definitely get into more detail after the meeting or whenever, but, and I did talk with the president and the VP, but, so this is, after being in there and assessing what's needed, I made this recommendation going forward, but the first point I want to make is this is not an increase to staff, and I think I put all that in there on how we're looking towards this. So obviously it's only been a week, but I have been involved over years and definitely this past year. So this is what I believe is needed from an operations standpoint, could make us stronger, and to get in there and make sure the customer service and that items are being addressed. It is not an increase to staff. I just want to make that point. We are working now on her, assuming this is approved by the board, we are working already on how we would look at the structure within her responsibilities. But right now, as far as that, the rest of the positions, I'm meeting with all the department heads. Steve is still in place where he is, as long as everybody else. Golf would be on me, but I will have more for you, yes. And be glad to go into it afterwards. No increase to staff.
Other discussion? Jeff?
Okay, going back several years, I had a conversation with Bob Thompson when he was here and suggested this idea to him then. I don't think I called it Director of Operations. I called it a second GM or whatever. But I made that recommendation to him. I made that recommendation to Mr. Bailey in person both times. And the reason that I made that recommendation was it looked to me like the job of general manager was growing in responsibility and complexity to the point where we needed a second member in there helping to do the job. I didn't go through who did what, or I didn't set up an org chart or anything like that. But I did that. And the company that I worked for previously had done something similar. We called it 2 in a box. And we did it with anyone new. You were with the older occupant for some period of time till you learned that job. And the jobs at my company were moderately complex. So it took a while. So for the reason of learning, for the reason of span of control, for the reason of just more work than I think one person should do. Now, are there people on the face of the planet who can do it? One, sure. Yes, there are, and I've known some of them. But that isn't always the case, and you get a better result, I think, if you fracture the responsibility correctly, you follow it, you have someone that is detail-oriented. Now, in my experience, most management organizations at the top are not detail-oriented. A few are, but most aren't. And so if you have someone running operations who is detail-oriented and who can watch the things that people at the top of the chain don't watch, and in Ocean Pines' experience haven't watched, I think that's a good thing. I don't think we know the full dimensions of it, and I would be willing to support the notion that we ought to do this with a little bit of figuring out yet to be done. I think that's the responsible way to do it. I think it does balance the load, and load can kill you. I'm not talking literally, but I mean it can get it to the point where you can't get things done. Our members want things done. They want to ask reasonable questions, get reasonable answers, and if they highlight a problem, have somebody who can go fix it. Maybe there's a philosophy in there, in which case the board's involved in setting philosophy and doing that kind of stuff. All well and good, but I think the job here is broad enough to support that structure, and recognize that from the association's point of view, there's little or no risk. Our employees serve at the pleasure of ... That means what it says, folks. If it's the pleasure of the board or the administration, if they're involved, to have someone work for them, they can. If it's not their pleasure, they don't have to, and they need no reason. So I hear people talk about risk and safety. I don't think the risk is big. I think the safety is fine, and I think the job in total would be better. So, my 2 cents.
Yeah, I have a comment too, then Esther, you're next. I think the interesting thing here is look back about 30 days when, or longer, when we no longer had a GM, and we took the liberties to create this transition management team and basically took a lot of the operational day-to-day responsibilities and moved it down to what we feel like is an appropriate level within the organization. The department heads are now front and center on a lot of the activities, and what has transpired over this past 30 days is a lot of things got done. And I think that it really relates to the fact that we moved the operational decisional requirements down to where we felt it would be much more applicable, and we've seen tangible evidence of that. So this is another way to more formalize that. So we have that under the purview of the GM, and it's also after the GM took a look at what's been happening over the past several weeks and has agreed and concurred that the things are indeed working as we had hoped they would. The idea of making sure that we have a director of operations is because that position was not ever defined in our in our bylaws. So in other words, the board has a responsibility to authorize positions. You can't, even though the GM can reorganize and restructure within that thing, if you're creating a new position, that's a board level authority. So that's what we're doing, to making sure that when we make this move, that we followed all the appropriate protocols in our governance documents in order to do so.
Thank you. To follow up on Doug, the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, getting the same results. We've gone through 3 GMs recent times. So to keep doing the same old isn't working. We were given a unique opportunity, as Doug mentioned 30-some days ago when we lost our GM, to put this layer, I call it a second layer of management in. This job, in my opinion, is too big for one man or woman to do. Having this layer of management with the director of operation and director of finance and HR really helps make us as a whole more successful. As Doug said, we've gotten a lot of things done, and this has been great that our GM right now has had the opportunity to sit and watch to see if this structure has been working. Obviously, he does. He made this recommendation. For us to move forward and continue to grow, it is imperative that the GM have the right support. Whether it's, Michelle, who's in the office doing, I call her the front line of defense, or having a director of operation, director of finance, you have to have, in running a number of corporations, you have to have this to move forward, or we're just going to keep making the same mistakes that we have done for the last number of years. So I'm very supportive of the GM and his recommendation for this position.
Colette.
Yeah, I want to articulate my support as well. I view this as a change from a historical model of management in this organization, from a centralized management model where all of the decisions go through one person or go through the top. The organization has grown to the point where that model no longer works. We need a more nimble decision-making process, and I think this decentralized model is exactly what we need.
I guess is a good and a necessary step. I think over the last 30 days, all of us have come to realize that set up here, the old system simply doesn't work. Too much information gets lost, too much information is hidden, too many critical decisions are pushed down the road, too many critical decisions just aren't surfaced in time to be acted on. So I think that this is a good first step, and I think you can look forward to other steps to make us more effective in our management of this association from both a financial standpoint and from an operating standpoint.
Yeah, he can go. Okay, I just want to add my support as well. In the last probably a month and a half, actually, I've been working on TMT very closely with Public Works in particular, and I've seen the benefit of having someone who's on the front line, who's responding to questions, answering concerns from association members, as well as helping the department to really organize itself well. So I'm very supportive of this motion, and I think it positions us well for whatever we do in the future, whether we bring in another general manager or we have an RFP out there right now for community association management companies to provide us with a management type service. Whichever way we go, this positions the association well to be able to move forward. It also provides you the opportunity, if for some reason a GM comes in, it doesn't work out, in 2 years they're gone, we have the team in place to keep the association moving forward in a strong way.
Thanks, Doug. First, John, thanks for your reply and clarification. I'm actually very glad to see you not taking very long time to make a decision that was very obvious and long overdue. So you took a few days what the board has been asking for the last year. So I'm looking forward to more to come of good actions as far as the organization goes, and this is just the first of many steps. I gather that from you. So thanks again.
All right, seeing no other comments, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please record as necessary. Thank you. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, motion for initiating a referendum for the approval of the planned activities at the golf amenities. Slobodan.
Thanks, Doug. Motion. I move that the Board of Directors initiates a referendum to obtain the approval of OPA membership on the planned action to replace existing golf amenity facilities, namely the clubhouse and the cart barn buildings. Purpose and effect. The purpose of this motion is to gain membership approval for these planned expenditures that, when added together, are very close to our, or could be, that are very close to or could exceed Board's current spending authority as defined in the bylaws section 513D. The effect of this motion is for the Board to engage the membership in approving this very costly investment for one of OPA's valuable amenities. Background. In reviewing the OPA bylaws of section 513D, the following questions come to mind. Number one, does the excess of 20% cost limitation requiring a membership referendum in section 513D1 apply to the total capital expenditures in a given fiscal year, expenditures being plural? Question two, does the excess of 20% cost limitation in section 513D1 apply only to individual projects in a fiscal year, regardless of the number of projects? The above questions need answers because of section 513D2, where the use of plural, in quote, facilities, in combination with, in quote, the Board is undertaking, end quote. And this raises the question of the correct application of the 20% limitation without a referendum during a fiscal year.
Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion doesn't make it to the floor. Sorry, for the sake of moralizing, I asked for a second to the motion. Sorry. Is there a second? All right, seeing none officially, it doesn't make it to the floor. Next item on the agenda, I'll move the Board of Directors issue an RFP for an independent lease of the golf course. Slobodan.
Thank you, Doug. I move that the Board of Directors approves the action to issue an RFP with the help from an independent industry expert to lease OPA's golf course with an intent to have the results presented to the Board by July 1, 2019. Purpose and effect. By leasing the golf course, the Board of Directors will provide a long-term financial stability for this valuable amenity that is also fair to all associations' homeowners. The effect of this motion is to transfer the financial risk from the association to the leasing party. Background. OPA operated its golf course using in-house resources as well as fee-based outside management services. Both approaches produced mixed and inconsistent results, thereby placing sizable financial burden on all association homeowners. According to the last 10 years of OPA audited annual reports, the golf operations cumulative total net revenue under expenses, including depreciation, is a negative dollar amount of $6,490,180. With the golf industry continuing to experience negative trends and growing competition from the surrounding courses, it has become prudent for the OPA Board to find a long-term leasing solution.
Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion doesn't make it to the floor. Next item on the agenda, motion to agree to submit an RFP for executive search firm. Colette.
The motion is to agree as a board to submit an RFP for an executive search firm to aid the association in identifying candidates for the GM position. Purpose and effect, to engage a competitive process for identifying an executive search firm to aid in identifying candidates for the vacant GM position. Background: in the process of determining next steps for leadership of Ocean Pines, since the GM position has become vacant, the board has begun pursuing an outsource option through an RFP process to solicit management firms. In order to provide the association with all possible options and to ensure the best and most cost-effective alternative, we also should be engaging a process for locating candidates to hire to fill the position with an individual who would be hired as an employee of OPA. This motion is meant to initiate that process through solicitation of bids from executive search firms.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Discussion. Frank?
I spoke with Colette about this, and I'm fine with the motion. The only thing is it should be a contingency search. We should not be paying out any money at this time because we're not exactly sure which direction that we're heading in. If we go with a contingency search, you can go to multiple firms. If they elect to accept the assignment, that's great. If they don't accept the assignment, we can always defer and go to a retained search if we decide that that's the way we want to go after we look at all the alternatives.
Esther?
I don't support the hiring of an executive search firm only because we've done this before and we probably have a filing cabinet with a ton of resumes over the last 2 years that we can go back and look at. To pay out $20,000 or $25,000 or whatever it costs for that, since we've just done this in the last couple of years, I just don't feel it would be prudent. In addition, we are exploring another avenue that's, as you said, we're a different organization now. We're changing our structure, and so to speak. I just don't feel that this is an accurate or wise use of our money at this point.
Right. Jeff, then Colette.
I do not support the engagement of an executive search firm at this point. If, however, we do that, we must put a clause in the contract that says if we find someone, particularly someone who's internal, there is no fee due. And if you don't put that clause in there, guess what you'll pay? They'll find the opportunity, they'll present it as if they discovered it, and they will claim a fee to which they're not entitled. I've seen them do it. So you put this two-liner in there, it's a very small paragraph, says what I said. And I don't support engaging one right now, but if we end up doing that, then we have to have that clause in there to protect us.
Colette?
I agree with the points that Frank and Jeff have made. I disagree with what Esther is stating. In the past, the executive search firms that we've used have solicited resumes from people from the HOA industry. I think our organization has changed, and I think we need to look at qualified candidates coming from the municipal management population. And again, we looked at securing an outsourced option for managing the association recently, and we found that that was much more costly than having our own employee. And I think it would be fiscally prudent of us to look at an employee option as well as the management firm option, but broadening our search to include people from the municipal management population.
Yeah, I have a comment. So I'm of two minds. Number one is we've got an RFP out on the street right now with regard to getting a management company to assign an individual that would act as the GM, and we pay it as such. One of the things that's been talked about before, has been readily apparent since we've moved into the transition management team, is how the organization has evolved. You know, quite frankly, I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that we go back and look at the general manager job description based on what we've learned over the past 30 to 45 days. And I think that job description needs to be adjusted. One of the other things that I would look at from the individual, that hopefully we can find someone that meets the criteria to come in from a contractual basis and mandate them to say, take a look from a consultative view of exactly what it is that the organization needs and provide that as well. In other words, help us modify this job description. I think what we can safely say, and I have all the confidence in the world that we'll be able to continue to say this, is we don't really have an operational problem from a staffing perspective or an organizational perspective. What we have is an opportunity to take a look at how the leadership is structured and adapt accordingly to the evolving environment we have here at Ocean Pines. That'd be another, I would call it a mandate or requirement if we brought somebody on. I like Frank's idea about a, retained. So in other words, I don't want to spend any money right now because we may just find an individual that allow us to do those kinds of things while we're at the same time knowing that we have some homework to do with regard to the ongoing description for the job duties of the general manager. So I'd like the concept, but if we have to expend funds right now, I don't think I'm generally in support of that because I think we still have a little more homework to do. Perhaps something like that is better in due time, based on the results that we get back from the information out of this RFP that's currently out there, and maybe we take another look at it after some period, agreed upon time period. So that's my slogan on that, Esther.
Thanks, Doug. I'm not in favor of a motion for two reasons. Number one, we have two senior directors on our staff, Colby Phillips and Steve Phillips. They have done a phenomenal job in the last couple of months, stepping in and fulfilling some of the void that was created as a result of not having a GM in place. And I think that that showcases and illustrates the strength of their individual talents and skills. What we basically need to do, with the help of John Viola now as a GM, is to really to evaluate their strengths and weaknesses. And that's going to help us as we look at the management firm RFP and the proposals that we will receive. How do we take their offering and how do we create what I would call a hybrid management model for the association? So I'm more in favor of letting the RFP run out, conclude, let's see what their offers are, because I believe that one of the things that the association has not tried in the past is really the hybrid model, management model approach. And now we have a perfect opportunity to do that with Steve Phillips and Colby Phillips on board in their newly expanded roles, and with John Viola and his experience that's going to be very evident as he help the board sort things out in the coming months. And so I would be more in favor of seeing if the RFP for the management firm is successful, if we get good offers, and then decide if we need to really expand our net or not.
Esther.
Colette, I agree with you. We've talked about this, that the definition of a GM has to be changed because, again, modifying, we've talked about we need more of a general manager, township manager. I've been told in the past that we have several resumes that came in, two from Maryland, and I believe one from Florida, from the last recruiter, that were town managers, that I would say, hey, before we spend money, let's go look at those resumes again. So I agree with you that what we need, but I would like to see the RFP for the outside contractor come in because we have to still, as a board, redefine the role. We never had this layer of management. So that job, quite frankly, shouldn't get the pay that it's gotten before because we have a second layer here that's now in place. The responsibilities, we don't need a GM to come in and redo the organization. We have that structure that we've now put into place with the new GM, acting GM. Sorry to use that word, interim GM. But the point is that we have some legwork to do still in defining what we want. But I would like to look at some of the resumes that have come in the past that were township managers, town managers, and kind of table this discussion until we'll see what we get from the RFP that's out on the street. Thank you.
Colette, and then Steve, and then Jeff.
Yeah, a main concern that I have is the amount of time that we're going to have this interim GM in place. And we noticed last time we had a temporary GM in place that, it went on for a very long period of time, and I don't think anybody wants that to happen. So I'm more in favor of having a parallel process, that we look at two things at once. I think we're capable of doing that, and I think that it would be prudent for us to look at both the outsourcing and the employee model. In either event, we're going to have to look at the position and the requirements of our organization, and I see no reason to delay that pending the receipt of the responses to the RFP that's out there right now.
Steve.
Yeah, I would just say I'm not in favor of spending money on an executive search firm right now. We all received a resume yesterday from a town manager in Pennsylvania that's already on the street people are already starting to send in resumes. I'm not convinced that we don't have the expertise in the association right now to screen people and to determine who might be a good GM. So I'm just not keen on spending money. I don't have a problem putting an RFP out there to see what's available in terms of search firms, especially if we do it on a contingency basis, as Frank said, but I'm not in favor of retaining someone at $20,000 or $25,000 to help us.
Jeff.
One of the tricks, if you will, it's not really a trick. One of the tricks in this whole operation here is that the manager of an HOA and the manager of a city or a municipal manager are about as far apart as you can get. And very few HOAs have the kind of infrastructure that we have that makes us look more like a city in many respects. We've chosen not to do that. I don't have any quarrel with that, but nevertheless, that's kind of the way the place runs a lot. If you're not careful when the search firms advertise, if they advertise for an HOA manager, that's what they'll get. And if they get a municipal manager, it might be 1 out of 50, 1 out of 100. It won't be very many because it's the wrong job from their point of view. So how the search firm advertises to get even anybody to show interest to them is kind of tricky here, because we are asking for one thing, and it's not untrue. We're not deceiving anybody, but it isn't accurate either at the same time. So I think it's a fairly intense discussion with any search firm that we're going to hire for anything, to say, here's the difference. This is not a normal HOA. This is what it is, but here's what it is. And it may look like an HOA because that's what we talk about. That's what we like. But there are some things that we do that no HOA, very few HOAs, if any, do. And they don't want to do. So if we're going to get a firm in here, they have to be aware of that very, very much. They have to understand it. They have to agree with it. Otherwise, they won't source, not to be mean or anything, they just won't source it correctly. And the people we end up looking at can be very good for a different job.
I got one too, but go ahead.
Colette, I agree with you that we don't want to make this position, this temporary position, long-winded. I would offer this out. I don't know if it's called a friendly amendment, but whatever. You know, I'm not good with that. Anyways, I want to just table this, and I'm just saying at least a month. I want to look at the resumes we already have in-house that we've gotten before, and like Steve said, we just got one yesterday. Just between now and maybe the next meeting that we have. I just want to table it and see what we get, because more people, I think Steve's right, are going to be sending it in to us that are town managers. So it's not that I'm looking to kill the idea. I'm looking maybe table it as a friendly amendment.
Wait, I have one comment. Go ahead. I tend to agree with Esther on this one. One of the other things that came up, and I had forgotten to mention it earlier, is yesterday I got an email from the CAI, the Chesapeake branch, who recommended, who we sent the RFP to, and they had made recommendations for about 7 or 8 other organizations. So what we need to do is agree to extend the RFP, and I think we should reach out to those additional 7 or 8, which would sort of fall in the line with what I think we're conceptualizing now. Say it reaches out, we get a few more information, bits of information back, and maybe we do table this with the idea that we're not just putting it off, but we're actually gathering more information in preparation to have this discussion again. So I think all of those things being considered, it might be a good idea to table it for this point in time, but certainly have it as a must-do item here in the next before the next meeting.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with that. I think, you know, one of my motives here was to get this discussion going, and clearly I did that.
Yes.
So mission accomplished, and I agree with tabling the motion with the proviso that we are going to be looking at these resumes. We're going to be actively pursuing a parallel process that is that gives us all options.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to table the existing motion on the floor.
Second. So moved.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of tabling the motion, and then it becomes a unfinished business item at our next meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
going to suggest to withdraw, because then it's from parliamentary procedure, it's a lot easier.
You can table
Yeah,
pending
you can bring it back.
gathering additional
bring it back.
information, which may go beyond a meeting.
All right, we'll table the motion. I'll tell you what, I'll stand corrected in public if it tabling versus a withdrawal. We've tabled motions in the past. Matter of fact, if you recall the last meeting, we had to take it off the table and bring it back into the meeting. So I think there's a couple of ways to do it. Your comment is so noted. We've made a motion to table it. We'll table it, make sure it's on the next business meeting. Next item on the agenda, motion to approve the formation of a compensation work group. Colette?
Okay, the motion is to approve the formation of a compensation work group to develop a resolution on compensation philosophy for OPA that forms the basis for the organization's pay and benefit package structure, with the expectation that it be monitored and reviewed based on recommendations to the board by an ongoing general manager work group to include representatives from each department. Purpose and effect: to develop a resolution that will establish a compensation philosophy that ensures consistency in the process of decision-making related to employee pay and benefit structure, and ensures ongoing monitoring to ensure that it is reflective of national standards in the local marketplace. Background: in the past 2 years, the Ocean Pines Board of Directors authorized pay studies to ensure consistency with the regional marketplace and made changes to the employee benefit offerings in order to ensure that they are in line with national standards. Elimination of the state safe harbor provisions resulted in a reduction in OPA contributions to participating employee 401k accounts. The health insurance premium program was changed from 100% employer paid to 80% employer, 20% employee pay. Both these measures yielded savings to the association and corresponding reductions in the value of the compensation package for participating employees. Criticisms of the pay studies comparison basis delayed implementation of many of their findings and recommended adjustments. To give participating employees time to adjust to the cost increase for insurance, the board approved a one-time payout to cover the increases. To offset the cost of the association of this payout, the board recommended elimination of merit increases to all employees for the coming fiscal year, with the expectation that the association achieve the goals of A, bringing the entire compensation package, pay and benefits, in line with the marketplace in preparation for the 2020 budget year, and B, establishing a fair and equitable process for implementation of any recommended adjustments to the compensation structure. In service of these goals, the board approved the concept of securing a compensation study to provide the basis for bringing the value of our compensation package in line with similar organizations and positions within our regional hiring marketplace and ensuring their consistency with national standards. Historically, it has been acknowledged that OPA salaries and hourly pay rates are somewhat below the local market for comparable positions, but that the generous benefit package offset this differential sufficiently to attract and retain high-quality employees. While our recent benefit changes are justified by national trends in benefit offerings, it is acknowledged that with changes in board composition from year to year, our employees are vulnerable to additional unexpected reduction in net compensation due to changes in the benefits and compensation program that are driven by budget pressures but may not reflect local market trends. Instability in the process for making such decisions is expected to adversely impact stability of our workforce over time. This motion is intended to establish a compensation structure that will be monitored and reviewed by an ongoing GM work group. The goal is to create consistency and stability in the process by which future decisions regarding employee compensation, both pay and benefit program, such that they reflect changes in both national standards and standards in the regional and local hiring marketplace rather than budget pressures. Only after this framework is created should the board's decision to hire a firm to conduct a compensation study be executed. The firm should be charged with reviewing the quality of the compensation plan approach set by the resolution on compensation philosophy, measure the current pay and benefit structure against the marketplace, and propose a path to move to a new plan that reflects the OPA compensation philosophy, national standards, and the regional marketplace. The authority reference for this is OPA bylaws section 5.14 that states the duties of the board of directors shall include but not be limited to those set forth in this section, with section D stating the board shall establish rates of compensation, employee benefits, and other personnel policies for all employees of the association, and periodically review and, if appropriate, revise all job descriptions and personnel policies.
Is there a second?
Short story long.
Is there a second?
For discussion.
All right. Discussion, although I'm compelled to make a comment. I think that is historically the longest narrative of background.
Right. That's what you get when you elect somebody with a philosophy degree.
And I admire your thoroughness in that.
Right.
Frank?
3 points, 2 of which are kind of minor nits, but and one that's just a more major nit. We don't need a philosophy, we need a policy. And as a corporation, corporations have policies that say, when we establish a range for wages, if you were under this range, we do this to move you in the range. They say if you're in the range, this is our policy regarding merit increases for people within the range. And if you're above the range, they say this is our policy for dealing with people who are compensated higher than the salary range. So we're talking about a policy, not a philosophy, okay, that has to be established by the board. The second thing, which is a minor nit, is I disagree with the concept. Historically, it has been acknowledged that OPA salaries and hourly pay rates are somewhat below the local market in comparable positions. The facts are we have 2 compensation studies, one done internally and one done by an external firm that we have questions on, but one shows nobody overpaid, one shows 10% of our workforce overpaid. So I'm not prepared to just carte blanche say that we're all underpaid or that we're overpaid, which leads to the third point. To put this policy in effect, we in effect have to have the wage study completed to know what our people should be paid in terms of wages. Once we determined where people were at in relationship to under, where they should be, and over, then we can address as a policy from the board what to do in the upcoming budget. But to put the policy in effect before we do the wage study would actually be quite easy. It's this. If you're under the wage, we move you to the bottom 10, to the 10% inside the range. If you're inside of it, you're eligible for a 4% merit increase max from a merit pool that doesn't exceed the cost of living. And if you're above it, on a case-by-case basis, we evaluate your performance and do what we have to do. So policy would be easy. But we need the wages in place because right now, quite frankly, sitting here, I don't know which one of those 2 studies is correct.
Colette, I have a comment too, but go ahead.
Okay. What you're talking about, Frank, is pay. And compensation philosophy looks at pay and benefit structure. And I agree with you, we need a policy, but I think we need an overarching philosophy that provides a structure for the policy and decision-making that has to do not just with how we level people within a pay grades and pay systems, but also an overall philosophy of how we, we're not a business that generates revenue. Based on the larger portion of our revenue is not generated by the efforts of our employees. Our revenue comes from the membership, and that's a different situation from a typical business where compensation and awards are really correspond with the revenue that is generated. And I think we need to look at the philosophy of how compensation is structured and thought about in an organization such as ours, not just the pay leveling, but also how we balance compensation, benefits, pay, and how we look at awards for excellence in an organization or a company in which excellence is not reflected by profit increases.
Yeah, I have a comment. So in looking at the motion, the way it's been written, you're basically calling for the formation of a work group to do a lot of legwork for us, to go and interview, research, do a number of different things to help the board, be more informed in making a decision. I see it nothing more than that. I think what may come out of that is a policy. I would also expect that this work group would interact with Budget and Finance in some way, shape, or form to get an idea of different things that they look at from their perspective. So at face value, I don't want to get to the end of the race yet. I think at face value, we're talking about creating a group that will do this kind of research and involve the necessary individuals from the community, from the Budget and Finance Committee, from HR folks, and so on and so forth, having privy to those compensation and salary studies as well, and come back at some point in time with information for us to enact a policy. And if at some point in time after this group has done some research and provided some preliminary recommendations, maybe we look at, is this the right time to do the compensation study now before we do a philosophy, or or doing it in some other order. But again, I look at it as preparatory work. In other words, allowing the board to have some more information using the resources of the community in order to do so. I'm a big advocate of the advisory committees and getting at intellectual capital that's out here to help us with decision-making and being informed. So, Frank, and then Slobodan.
Well, I have no objection whatsoever to the concept, and I have no objection whatsoever to the work group. Here's the concern that I have. If we, in fact, delay the wage study to determine the wage rate ranges, okay, with this group, then I think we should have a trigger in here when we automatically start that study, because the facts are this year we were given a whatever it was, policy, study, recommendation, and between the board and the Budget and Finance Committee, I think it would be just nothing less than accurate and fair to say our backs were against the wall. And we don't want that. We don't have to deal with that this budget period. And I don't see any reason why we can't do the wage study in conjunction with this. My objection is delaying the wage study, not having this group. And once we have the wages, you just have more information for a policy or philosophy or strategy, whatever you want to call it. But I don't want to delay it, and if you really look at the timing, if we gave this group 90 days to report, okay, we'd be talking basically by the time, we'd be talking May, June, and July, and by the time you execute then the wage study, we would be into the budget. And I want to get into have the information for the budget well in advance to the Budget and Finance Committee and to the board, so that we're not in the corner again this year.
My take on this subject is very simple. The first question I have would be whether we have updated job descriptions, whether we have updated job classifications. My preference would be that we defer this, give John Viola, Steve Phillips, and Colby Phillips time to review from an HR perspective the situation, including all these topics that we are discussing, and then have them come to the board and say, listen, we need X, Y, Z, whether that's in a form of a policy or a work group or whatever that turns out to be. I would prefer that we take that approach instead of passing something that may create time, bureaucratic pressure, and in the end, we end up not doing anything or do very little. So I'm more concerned that the board is made aware of where we are with current job descriptions and classifications. We know that's been actually a topic that the board has brought up before when we had the HR person as a part-timer, and I'm sure that he has done a lot of work in that area, and that's something that we need to hear more about, get updated on those things, and then decide how do we proceed, whether it's a policy or something else. But I think, from my perspective, if you read the GM's duties and responsibilities, he is acting as a human resource officer. This is part of the HR topic. So if he comes to the board and say, listen, we need a policy on this, can you get this going and approve it, bless it, whatever? So my perspective, let this come from the association, let this come from the management, from the operational level to the board to take the actions that, as opposed to us doing it, which I think may create a little bit of a bureaucracy, and it may be premature.
There are a couple of things going on here. The first one starts with the job description. You can't figure out what to pay somebody if you don't know what they're doing. So I agree with that part of it as an early on activity. There are a couple of other things involved. You have to look at what the market is paying for jobs with similar responsibilities and scopes and spans and all that stuff. They don't have to be exactly the same, but they have to be equivalent. Now, the market can be brilliant, or the market can be really stupid. So that isn't the be-all and end-all, but it is a starting point. We need to know what others are paying in this area for equivalent levels of responsibility and span. The third thing is an examination of what the organization itself is able to pay and willing to pay. Sometimes you can't pay market. You just don't have the money. I don't think that's our case, but you have to consider that and you have to look at it. When you put those things together, you get good job descriptions, you look at what the market is paying, you kind of decide whether that's brilliant or not, and then you look at what you could do as an organization. That's when you can come up with an answer, and you can reflect it in a policy. It ultimately, part of its philosophy, but the real driver's the policy. And what you want to do, somebody has already mentioned this notion of pay under, pay on range, pay above. Those are three different things, and we need to have an idea about what we're going to do before we run into it. That takes the individual bias out of the transaction, because you're not talking about individual people at that point. And it's not that you're annoyed with Fred or whatever at that time. You're talking about the job itself and what is the job worth, and then the level of, you can have levels of performance and you can add a bunch of really neat stuff in there. That's the way I think we should go at it. That's been suggested. I think that's the right approach to do those things. Come up with the data. Do it as expeditiously as possible. I wouldn't treat it like an ongoing fire. I wouldn't put it off for 2 years either. So it's somewhere sooner, in my mind, sooner rather than later. And you work at it, and you figure those things out, and then we get together and decide what we want to do and what is best for a combination of communities. It's got to be best for the association. It's got to be a decent answer for members. It's got to be a decent answer for employees. If you make it a stupid answer for employees, you'll have a smaller group to deal with at some point, maybe. Maybe not. Depends. There are a lot of things to look at. And if you do that, I think you come up with a reasoned approach, and then you can begin to exercise that and take out of it as much political stuff as you can, maybe not all, and as much individual bias as some people will always see if you do it that way. Even if there's no bias, they'll see it as bias. So you take that out, you talk about the positions, and that's the way you come at it, rather than individuals, in my opinion. That's what I've always done in any compensation work that I've done, both at my former company and there are two of them, when I was involved in that stuff, and that's the way you go about it, and it worked. So.
I'll entertain one final comment. Colette?
Okay, as HR liaison under the Transition Management Group, I've been working with the RFP compensation study work group to come up with the RFP for the compensation study. And these are exactly the discussions we've been having in that group. Step one that is currently in process is getting the updated job descriptions that reflect the requirements of the position, not the individuals who are filling them. Looking at the need for reflecting what's happening in the marketplace about having compensation philosophies, that this is what businesses are doing, and what businesses are also doing is having a advisory group within the organization that looks at compensation compared to the marketplace on an ongoing basis. So the discussion has been to move our process more in line with what's happening in businesses. And so some of what's being asked for is actually in process. I appreciate the sensitivity about the timeliness of this, and I know how long it takes to get a resolution written and done. Could take a year. I was hopeful that we would be able to push this along faster, but it was the recommendation of the RFP study group that we look at the philosophy and present a philosophy to the RFP bidders, so that what we get back is an analysis of whether, for our type of organization, the compensation approach and philosophy that we are recommending and that we'd like to take is the best for our organization, and that they then also come back with the compensation figures, the benefit structure, and a process for moving into a new approach to making decisions about compensation. So it's a big ask, it's a big job, but I think it's what needs to happen for our organization to be engaging in these discussions in a more business-like process going forward.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Then I'll, on that note, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, record. Motion doesn't carry. Next item on the agenda. 1-4, 2-4, and 4 against. No abstentions. All right, next item on the agenda. I'm sorry. All right, hold on, let's get back to the other folks. Next item on the agenda, police and admin building construction project. Frank.
Okay. The motion to award a contract in the amount of $1,276,000 for a guaranteed maximum price contract to Wayland Construction for the expansion and renovation of the Ocean Pines Police Department. The purpose and effect. The purpose of this contract is to expand the police department headquarters to meet current recommended space and construction standards for the department. The background. The proposed contract addresses deficiencies in the current facilities that create an unsafe working environment for the officers, for the victims and suspects by increasing workspace and constructing that space to current law enforcement design and construction standards.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Right. Okay. So let me just start in general by discussion, because there's 3 construction motions that are going to run in a sequence here, and there have been some pretty good questions asked about it. So first, let me address this to everybody. We reached out to a large number of contractors for each one of these projects. In fact, if you want a number to hang your hat on, 13. Okay? We got responses varying back from 1 to 2. When we talked with people, or the reasons that were given for folks not bidding is the current very strong construction market that we're experiencing on the Eastern Shore. One of the things that was unexpected in this process that in fact affects the process both in how it's run and in the cost and in the benefits to the association is one contractor ended up through the leveling process and the bidding process as being the recommended contractor for all 3 projects. And the benefits for that or in negotiating, to kind of give you just an example that's easy to understand. When you go to a typical construction site, there's a trailer. Okay, inside that trailer is a project manager and a superintendent that basically run that project. So we anticipated having 3 project managers and 3 superintendents on site at the same time. With one contractor, you need basically 1 project manager and 1.2 superintendents. So that reduces the general cost, the supervision cost and the project management cost, which can be passed directly on to us. The second thing that I'll get into more specifically, but I want to address now that we have the number of bids and the number that have come back, is first, it's important to understand that A, as a board, and B, as fellow homeowners, that we recognize and acknowledge the serious and unacceptable shortcomings in the planning and execution of our past 2 major construction projects. Simply unacceptable. And that was the remodeling of the golf club and the design build of the yacht club. We'll get into the golf club in a minute when we discuss that. We have discussed these shortcomings not only with ourselves as a board, but with the operation teams and with the contractors, and these projects will have specific contractual and oversight parameters to prevent these shortcomings from recurring. Okay? Some of the steps that you'll see on each of these projects include, we will have, working with the operating team and the general manageable, knowledgeable homeowner contractors, specifically 2 that have been identified are Marvin Steen and Frank Brown, that will be working with the GM to provide design, quality, and cost guidance. Second, there will be contractual provisions in these enabling OP to review and select subcontractors. And that is a huge benefit, because typically if you contract something out, like for this building, it's $100 a square foot. You'd have drywall. The general contractor selects the drywall person, and they select the drywall person that gives them the lowest bid. In this contractual arrangement that we're going to have, we have the right to review and select whatever subcontractor we choose as an organization, operating team, working with this construction, with the people the local people that will be on this kind of ad hoc committee. That's a huge benefit to us, both in terms of quality, and it's a huge benefit in terms of cost. We will have also ongoing oversight from the Budget and Finance Committee and the board to make sure that schedules are where they should be and the expenditures are where they should be on all 3 projects. Final thought before we get into the specifics of the police station. You know, and this applies to all these buildings, and hopefully you will remember it as homeowners, and the boards that succeed us will. When you fail to maintain a building, like you have in this situation of specifically the golf clubhouse, in the name of fiscal responsibility, when it comes time to do those repairs that should have been done over the years where you've saved nickels, you're going to be paying dollars, and it's going to be big dollars. And it's an unnecessary waste of your resources. The situation that we're in with 2 of these buildings is just simply due to fiscal and management irresponsibility in maintaining the assets of the association. So the police station specifically. The police station right now, if you've not been in it, has about 1,780 or so square feet. It should have 5,000. It was designed 30 years ago, long before Oklahoma City. The current police station specifications for communities require somewhat hardened structures. You know, not exactly, but if you want to kind of have an idea, it's military-grade construction to provide for bulletproof and bomb-proof situations. That building there is far from that. We don't need that, and the chief is working with those standards to incorporate the standards that he needs. But right now, the building is totally unacceptable and unsafe for operating a police department.
Other discussion? Slow it down.
I'm going to be very curious to see how our newly appointed director responds to this, given his contractual background. Listen, I've been in the IT industry for 35 years. I managed a $500 million project pipeline worldwide. And what I see here in terms of the procurement is pretty disappointing and disturbing. On the onset, I would not vote in favor of any of these 3 projects. Very simple reason. From my perspective, we have a failed procurement. To receive only 1 bid per each project is probably, should be of great concern to the board and to the association. Market is sending a message to us. If we are putting out the RFPs at the highest season, why are we doing that? Why are we not doing it when it's low season? If we know that is the problem. Now, let me focus on a big stuff, big picture. So, to Director Daley's point, he said that by consolidating the 3 projects, we're going to get a better efficiency and better costs. You're changing the RFP procurement process in the middle of it. If you wanted to create efficiency and cost benefits, the RFP should have been put out to state very simply, bidders are encouraged to submit proposals for all 3 and provide added benefits. And they will be scored based on those kind of offers. It's called evaluation criteria. If we have not done that, to go later on and to start changing the procurement process and dealing with a single bidder to consolidate the 3 proposals into 1, to me is not what I would call a best practice for procurement process. And if you want to do it right, you should really issue RFP for all 3 as a single bid and see if the marketplace is going to come back to us saying, my God, now we're looking at a $3 million opportunity. Now perhaps they will be interested to respond. Now, to your point about the subcontractors, you know, I understand what you're saying, but that is a simple RFP, terms and conditions. One of the things the RFP should spell out, and it's certainly the one that I wrote about a year ago, that you, I think, said the board should not be writing. But, you know, one of the things that RFP should state that it is customers' prerogative to approve any subcontractors prior to the prime bidder engaging those on a project. So that is a standard RFP, terms and conditions process, nothing new in that. Number 3, and this is what really concerns me, huge, I didn't see a request for performance bonds, bid bonds at all in this RFP. For me to be working on a project of this size or projects of this size, it's just inconceivable, incomprehensible that we don't have performance bond, bid bond. I'm sure some of you know what bid bonds are required for and what performance bonds are required for and what the difference is. So, by the way, that is not necessarily something that cannot be managed. But to ask for one, we all know that's going to cost money because it is going to add to the project cost. So I just, I'm sorry, as much as I would like to see these projects go forward, there's just so much what I believe wrong with the way this procurement process has been handled that I'm just really worried that we will rush through something that later on is going to cost us a lot more money that is not showing in the numbers that are presented as of now. And I'm comfortable with the fact that a lot of this information came to us in the last 48 hours, and I'm sure some of us, probably all of us, were spending countless hours in reviewing this and trying to catch up. And those are the directors that have not been involved hands-on, like you and Steve, to try to understand what's going on. But I'm very uncomfortable with the way the procurement process has been handled. I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that the bids did not come back with proper bonds. And I'm very uncomfortable with the fact that you didn't give the marketplace an opportunity to submit proposals for all three so that we can see how the marketplace would react with those kind of terms and conditions.
Other discussion? Jeff?
I just make.
Jeff,
Go ahead,
and,
Jeff.
and then Steve.
I'm not an enormous fan of our procurement process. I ran one that spent $1.5 billion a year, every year, for my company. And we did things a little differently. And if anybody wants to talk about that at some point in time, I'd be happy to do that. Some of the stuff we did wouldn't apply to Ocean Pines because we were a tad bigger. But some of the stuff scales, and some of it works. I'll give you one example, one example. When I issued an RFP, if you were to come back and let's say I issued an RFP for one, and you bid 3, what happens is you were disqualified because you didn't bid what I wanted. The way you could do that was people would bid what I wanted, and then after, as a separate thing, say, by the way, we have an idea, what if we do it this way? Well, they've already responded to me. I'm not looking for a crummy reason to disqualify people, but if you don't respond to what I bid, you're done. But if you do it the way I said, and we were happy to tell people about this, you could do it. The other thing we did is if one of the bidders bid 3, we immediately went back to all the other bidders who didn't do that, and we might allow them to bid, all 3. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. And if we got into the individual ones, which I'm not going to do, I could point out why we did. But there were reasons why we allowed that and not allow it. But you could modify. Every once in a while, a bidder will have a really brilliant idea that for all my work, education, and experience, I didn't think of. Why would I want to throw that away on some technicality? What I want to do is I want to be fair to the people that are bidding, so I could stop an RFP and reissue it. I reserve the right to do that. So if I got an idea from somebody, I could say, well, that's a good idea. Let's all of you bid on it. And not give them any advantage or disadvantage. They weren't penalized for having a different idea. You just had to do it right. And I think we could use a little bit of tune-up in the way we do some of our procurement. And some of the stuff I did at my company would fit, and some of it will not. I was spending a bit more than we do on a regular basis. I think the highest that ever got was $4 billion, but it was normally around 1.5 a year, every year. And we wrote 100% of the contracts for that effort. We did not involve until, I'm sorry, my company's legal, except to look at it later if I had a question. If I didn't have a question, they never saw it. So we were authorized to do that. And you can make the process efficient. You can we can set up some policies that will help. So I'm not a huge fan of our procurement process. I also don't think it's broken. I think we can make it better.
Okay.
And I don't think making it better is going to be expensive. I did some communication things that we won't like. When I issued an RFP, no account manager or officer of any company that was bidding was allowed on my property. And I took their badge away. and kept it until the RFPs were decided. That's so they couldn't go out on the floor and talk to the engineers and try to, however they did it, get them supporting some particular effort that they didn't really have responsible for, but they thought was fun. I kicked them off the property. They were not allowed to show up. If they showed up, they couldn't get in the building because it was secure facility with badge, if I had their badge.
All right, let's refocus on the motion rather than the procurement process. I don't want to go off track here. Steve and then Esther.
I'm not sure if this is still, I guess it's working. Just a couple of things I want to point out. Number one, that number that you see up there, the $1,276,000, is a guaranteed maximum price from the contract. And you'll see that in all three of the motions that we're considering this morning. They all have a guaranteed maximum price. The contingency on this project is $150,000, which means the project cost is projected to be actually $1,126,000. So it's not quite as bad as it looks up there on that number. The second thing is regarding to the whole procurement process, and as I've been working through the TMT and with Public Works and various people on these projects, one of the things I've learned is that Ocean Pines has a reputation of submitting RFPs, getting bids, and then not doing anything. That's part of the reason people are not bidding on our projects, because they're sick and tired of putting all the effort into preparing a bid, which is a very extensive process on these jobs, and then not hearing anything back from us, not getting an award. And we just can't keep doing that. Unfortunately, we only did get one bid on this. I think it's a very reputable company. We've gotten incredible references that Eddie has tabulated. I'd be glad to share any of that with anyone that wants to see them. I think we're working with a really good contractor. I think we've got a great opportunity to move forward and a great opportunity to improve the reputation of Ocean Pines in its bidding and contractual process.
Esther.
Steve, I was going to say the same thing. We keep forgetting the obvious. Nobody wants to work here. I mean, that's the obvious. Nobody wants to come into Ocean Pines and work here. You can't force people to give an RFP, and he's right, and I've done them. They're expensive. It's at this point, it's time to move on. We need to make decisions. We need to get started, and you just can't force people to work here. We have what we have. Let's move.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, just to make my final point in terms of risk management, these kind of projects, to award a contract without a bonds, performance bond or bid bond, to me is very, very unnecessary risk that the association is taking. So, and I'm reminded of the Yacht Club, actually. Believe it or not, we did the Yacht Club project without a performance bond. And we know how that played out. Some of the problems that we encountered with a contractor. We just spent, what, $70,000 on a new deck material. Anyway, I am just not in favor of doing this kind of projects without performance bonds. To me, that is a necessity to manage the risk.
All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay, please record. The motion carries.
What's next?
Next item on the agenda, Country Club Construction Project. Frank?
Okay, the motion to award a contract in the amount of $1,600,000 for a guaranteed maximum price contract to Wayland Construction for the design and construction of a facility located at the Ocean Pines Golf Course to replace the existing facility with a multi-purpose golf community use facility. Purpose and effect. The purpose of this contract is to replace an existing deteriorating facility with serious construction defects with a new multi-use facility. Background. The proposed contract addresses the need to replace a deteriorating single-use facility with a new multi-use facility designed to house golf operations and community activities. The current facility is used for golf only. The second story of the building is not suitable for any use whatsoever. Over the past year, architects, engineers, contractors, and members of the community who are respected contractors have advised this board not to spend any additional money to renovate the existing facility and to focus on constructing a new building. The proposed design right-sizes the space required to house golf operations and provides additional space to be used by the community at large in a single-story space with an energy-efficient facility.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Here.
Yes.
Okay. In my companies, I always feel a responsibility to my managers and my employees to explain my rationale, my reasoning for my decisions. I feel I owe my colleagues on this board and the association the same courtesy. I will tell you, I did not take this decision lightly. I spent a lot of time collecting facts and asking questions to come up with what I've come up with. I spoke with the GM, and I requested for him to put together with the appropriate people, a maintenance plan for not only the country club, but all the OPA structures. The lack of regular maintenance for all of our buildings has been a major cause of the disrepair over the years. If we're going to spend the money now and going forward with new structures, we have to have a maintenance plan put together. Also, in talking to the GM, I asked for a more detailed and structured marketing plan to be executed, not only when the new country club opens, but also now as we're building it. Finally, I was very pleased to hear that Marvin Steen, an icon and pioneer in construction in Ocean Pines, has offered for free to oversee the construction with Public Works to make sure that we're not being nickel and dimed, not wasting money, and can hopefully, with his expertise, can help keep us from reaching the max bid, key word, max bid of 1.6. I felt a referendum, which does cost tens of thousands of dollars, was no longer at this point a valid option for us. The country club is in major disrepair, and even if the community were to go to referendum and vote down a new structure, the fact remains that our bylaws require us to maintain the amenity. To do the repairs would have been well over $1 million, and I honestly felt in 5 years or so, another board would come in, decide to tear it down, and we would have wasted that money as well. Unfortunately, the time to repair has long passed. To conclude, I can only speak for myself as an independent director, but I'm also a homeowner. I make my decisions based on my personal feelings and facts alone. I'm not swayed by any personal interest groups in making my decisions. I hope the association can now come together and move forward with the many positive changes that are occurring in our ever-growing community to continue to make us a world-class community.
Other discussion? Slow down.
I'm opposed to the proposed motion for a few reasons. Number one, I go back to 10 years ago. Zagby International survey was done. I believe a third of the homeowners responded to the survey. One of the things they expressed concerns with is with our golf course amenity and the amount it costs the association. If you fast forward to the current survey that was done last year, a summary from that report that we received from the Communications Committee stated in conclusion, notes related to golf course, long-term review and plan for the golf course and clubhouse is noted by more than one and other amenities. Basically, the community that responded to this survey is asking the board to take a long-term view on this. Building a new clubhouse is not what I would call a comprehensive long-term view. It's basically just one piece of what I would describe as a long-term vision for this amenity. And I am concerned about that. I'm concerned with the way we are spending association's money. This is not board money. This is not the management money. This is every homeowner's money. You guys paid into this, 452 people. Now, so let me say this. I already said earlier that if you look at the 10-year audited financials, after depreciation, this amenity cost $6.5 million negative. If you exclude depreciation, the performance of the golf course is $2.2 million losses over the last 10 years. I looked at the business plan that was submitted for the golf course, and I was surprised to see how many critical pieces of what I would describe as a best practice industry standard business plan how many pieces are missing. Just to give you one example, there's nothing there about the pro shop. We don't know if we are making money on the pro shop or losing money on the pro shop. We don't know if we're making money on merchandise, on sales of clubs, or not. Yet, the design calls for a 1,000 plus square foot pro shop. Director, our treasurer and our general manager is shaking his head. He doesn't seem to agree with my comments. But you know what? We're here to think independently. And I am basically sharing my view on this particular topic because I believe that the community needs to have a long-term vision for how the golf course is going to be managed going forward. If you read the publications, Florida, in the last 5 years, golf courses have lost combined $100 million. This is not just a problem here, it's a problem throughout the country. And if you look at our resolution, MO2, on the amenity, it says that fee-based amenities and those providing food and beverage products and services shall be budgeted separately. These amenities should be managed to cover, at the minimum, operating costs through fees and operating revenue. For the last 10 years, that really has not been a compliance because the golf has lost money. Even this year, we budgeted a golf course amenity to lose $100,000. It's like basically planning to fail. And I just, I'm sorry, I know some of you are disappointed at what I'm saying, but when I ran for the board 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I said that I will do what is in the best interest of the entire association. And I am trying to stick to my promise. And sometimes it's not necessarily the popular perspective by few, but I have also received huge amount of feedback on this topic, including from golf players. And I understand both sides of the story, and that is all that I can leave you with. I appreciate your attention.
Further discussion? I'm sorry, you're out of order. I can't take a question from the floor. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the cart barn construction. Frank? Here it is, right here. You need a copy?
You gave all your copies away.
Get my copies away. The motion to award a contract in the amount of $430,000 for a guaranteed maximum price contract to Wayland Construction for the design and construction of a facility located at the Ocean Pines Golf Course to replace the existing facility used for the storage and maintenance of golf carts. Purpose and effect. The purpose of this contract is replacing an existing deteriorating facility with serious construction defects with a new facility. Background. The proposed contract addresses the need to replace a deteriorating single-use facility with a new facility designed for storing and maintaining golf carts. The current facility has deteriorated to the point of needing replacement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Opposed. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, closed session. Colette?
At a meeting of the Board of Directors of Ocean Pines Association Incorporated held on this 6th day of April 2019, scheduled at 9 a.m. in the Assateague Room of the OPA Community Center, the board voted to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussion of personnel matters specifically pertaining to the appointment of John Viola to assume the duties of General Manager for for a term to be established by the board, as permitted by the Maryland Homeowners Association Act, Section 11B 111 4I. Discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. No discussion, so all those in favor of moving into closed session to the adjournment of this meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Yeah. Wait a minute. Next item on the agenda, appointments. There are 5 appointments, and I'd ask for consideration of taking all 5 in total. Any objection to taking all 5 appointments in total? All right, the appointments. Jenny Cropper Ryan's third-term communications. Elaine Brady, third-term communications. John O'Connor, a 1-year extension on budget and finance. Jim Trumbull, appointed as chair of the Bylaws and Resolutions Committee, and Larry Perrone as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee. All those in favor of those appointments, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Are we going across the street?
Yeah, we gotta go across the street.